The old saying is Vandy is dandy, but I'm always thought that Vandy's more I'm adorable.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, welcome back into Locked On Bama. Luke Robinson with the HSA Radio Network. That's me. Jimmy Stein with Bama Online. That's him. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. I'll tell you about Game Time here in just a little bit. I want to thank you everydayers for making us your first listen. I want to thank you newbies who've just stumbled upon our wondrous world of Bama not Bama Online, but Locked On Bama. It's all in this gigantic umbrella.
Both wondrous worlds. It's a wonder that I'm in either one of them.
People wonder what they're doing listening to us. Jimmy, let's talk about Vandy here for a second because obviously they're coming up next. It is, in a very non-Saban fashion, the coaching staff has put out these mousetraps to let you know that it is a trap game. That is not something Saban would do. Saban would say, why don't you just tell them it's a trap game, right?
Yeah, I 50% love it and 50% think it's just hokey, but 50%.
100% on board with that.
You're 100% on board with me being 50-50 on it?
Yeah, because that's exactly
the math is getting complex in here. Frankly, that's a complex math.
That's what I was thinking. It borders on being something Auburn would do. And, I think that I'm like, okay, I don't know that I want to go there, but at the same time, I kind of get it.
Mike Price's first meeting with the football team back in 2003 when Mike Price was hired out of Washington State, him and his staff walked in the meeting room throwing sugar packets to the team as if we're going to win and go to the Sugar Bowl. And I hate that so much that I remember it 21 years later as like, don't do that.
That was worse than this.
It is, but it made me think of it. So that's why I'm 50% against it. But see, I like the message.
I think this first of all, that was 20-something years ago. And now I think these new kids who've had their faces buried in iPhones for God knows how long, kind of like me, need visual stimulation and visual markers to kind of make things sink in sometimes. And I'm not saying they're stupid. I'm just saying that's the way it is. I mean, they're much more visual versus auditory. And I think that if you put out mousetraps and indicate, hey, yeah, that Georgia game was awesome and we all had a blast. And but this game can sneak up on you. Don't let it sneak up on you. Okay, I got it.
Can you imagine though the scene where I'm just guessing it's someone like Josh Chapman, Denzel Duvall, or Clinton Dix is told to go to Dollar General and they walk in Dollar General and say, I need 30 rat traps, like mouse traps. And they're like, oh my God, you must have a huge problem at the football building. There must be a massive problem at the Malmore.
It's like, no, we're just trying to make a point. But it was funny because Josh Chapman is the one that I've seen associated with the story the most. Like he's been the one that's been putting them out. Have you not noticed that?
Probably where I got that from.
Yeah, that's where the Josh Chapman part is. So I was like,
there's a Dollar General right on the other side of that big bridge. It goes over, by the baseball field. I bet that's where he went. So they would know.
I just find it interesting that a Saban guy, was the one doing it.
Maybe I'm being too critical of it again. It just reminded me of that Mike Price story. And I never like to be reminded of Mike Price stories. I have, roughly 10 of them and 9 of them are terrible.
I thought you were going to say he walked in off the jet giving out people's Schmedium members only jackets like he came sporting in with. But anyway, so Vandy coming up, I assume there's going to be a great crowd from the Alabama perspective. I can tell you this. I went, I guess it was 17 when that very effeminate sounding offensive lineman for Vanderbilt said, Alabama, you're next. And I was like, uh-oh, for you. and lo and behold, we beat them 59-0, if you remember.
And the team was so fired up about that. And it was such an innocuous thing. I mean, I remember watching the guy say it. on that SEC final on SEC Network the week before. I believe Vanderbilt had beaten Kansas State, which was a big upset. And I think they might have even been in the top 25. And I remember seeing it and going, I remember being amused by it. And the next thing I know, Alabama, they went to the weight room and pumped iron that week like they're about to go face the Kansas City Chiefs in a college versus NFL game to prove it all. They were mad about it. And remind me, didn't maybe someone like Dan Walken predict Vanderbilt to beat Alabama?
Yeah, they did. And it didn't turn out very well for him. And if you remember in that game, first of all, that game was scorching hot. And but it was clearly, I'm talking, when people say, man, Alabama fans were everywhere. Alabama fans were everywhere. It was probably 65 or 70% Alabama people. When Alabama did stuff good, the place erupted. When Vanderbilt did stuff good, people were like, well, that was interesting. And
that apparently happened twice.
We punted on our first possession. I'll never forget that, thinking, oh, man, we should have gone in there and buried him. And then after that, it was Katie bar the door. And that was also the famous game where Tua did his own little version of a pirouette, turned around and hit, I think it was Devontae Smith for a touchdown. But he also hit Jerry Jeudy for a touchdown that game. I mean, Damian Harris did what he always did, broke loose for a 50-yarder. I mean, we just pummeled them. And it would have been good afterwards. It would have been funny for Vanderbilt. You know how like Alabama did this amazing video post Georgia. Oh my God, that video is so good. If you hadn't seen it, University put it out, and it's about 11 and a half minutes long. It is so incredibly well done. Oh my God.
It's like Christopher Nolan must have put that together.
Oh, he had to. I'm waiting for the sequel. I mean, it's awesome. But Vanderbilt should have put one out where it was just that guy, like rubbing his face. You got a steak on his eye or something going, I'm sorry I said that. And then that's the end of the video. So, but did you, let me, and again, of course, they got Diego Pavia, the quarterback who beat Auburn last year with New Mexico State. Otherwise, though, this Vandy team is, they're okay. They gave Missouri a good run. They obviously beat Virginia Tech, and Virginia Tech almost beat, I guess technically you could say they did beat Miami and got jobbed at the end. So they're not awful. This isn't going to be a cakewalk. I think that Alabama could still win something like 59-0. I think it is more likely Alabama wins this game 38-10. And this is the first game all year, by the way, Jimmy, if that prediction were to come true, this would be the first game all year Alabama hadn't scored over 40 points.
Wow. I'll probably pick Alabama to score 40 for that reason once I really put some thought into a score. I haven't done that yet, but I can tell you an initial thought I had is I'm not going to be surprised at all if Alabama wins this game roughly 42-7. Because I think that's the talent differential in Alabama versus Vandy, player 1 through 22, player 1 through 85. I think it's about Alabama 42, Vanderbilt 7. But games aren't played like that. Games have all sorts of variables, and there's a reason that they sent Josh Chapman to the Dollar General over the train track to get 20 rat traps, because this is a rat trap game, a trap game because Vandy is better than their brand. They're better than their name. So that lends itself toward maybe closer than you think. And Alabama is coming off a game where most football teams do not perform well the week after a win over Georgia. Most teams don't. NFL, college, high school. If you win the game of the year, the next week, you probably aren't playing with a full tank of gas. It's very difficult to get kids back on track that quickly. Me and you said, I remember saying it my own self, screw the 24-hour rule. Let's do 2 or 3 days of that Georgia game talk before we move on to Vandy. I said that myself. I am certain many players on Alabama's team sort of felt the same way. They're still reliving last Saturday. I get it. Makes perfect sense. If that's the case, Luke, and you go up to Nashville and with less than a full tank of gas, and you get a Vanderbilt that believes You don't normally play a Vanderbilt team that believes. This team does. I don't rule out 28-20. I think that's possible. I'm probably not going to predict that, so I don't believe that. But I don't rule that out. That's, I think, a possible outcome.
Yeah, I'm with you. And we're going to talk about some of the reasons why I'm with you. At the same time, I think you're way off. But right now, I'm going to tell you about Game Time. Game Time, it's the best. I use it all the time. If I were going to the Vanderbilt game, I would be using Game Time to get my tickets. That's just the way I would do this. I can't go because I coach my daughter's soccer team. Yet another reason you should never have children. I'm just teasing. Of course you should. We should all procreate. And I have 4 of them. So anyway, yeah, I love Game Time. Use it all the time. And I've used it for World Series games. I've used it for NBA. NBA's kicking back up. Can you believe it? College baseball, college football, basketball, NFL, everything. And the only time I ever had a mild issue was when I was going to the Miami Dolphins game. And it was my fault. And I was like, I got a ticket like 30 minutes before the game. It was a spur of the moment thing. I was in Miami and I got a customer rep on the line. They helped me through everything. They figured out what I did wrong. And then I got my ticket and there I was off at the game because Game Time's the best. And you want to use Game Time and you'll get $20 off your first purchase when you use code LOCKEDONCollege. When you go to Game Time, download that app and just get your groove on with Game Time. You will absolutely love it. I'm telling you. Now, I want to tell you about this new thing. All right, Jimmy and I are going to be at Academy next Friday. Next Friday, that's Friday the 11th. We will be there. I don't know the time yet, but circle Big Friday, October 11th on your calendar. Come out and visit me and Jimmy because it's almost time. Your new Academy Sports and Outdoors location is opening on Monday, October 7th at 4610 US Highway 280. We're not going to be there till the 11th. We're going to do a live show there. Come be one of the first to see the new store with the best sports equipment, outdoor gear, clothing, and shoes, all at low, low prices. Check out Academy's wide selection of brands. They got Nike and Stanley and Brooks and Carhartt and Blackstone and Yeti and Titleist and much, 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 much more. Don't miss our grand opening celebration. That's going to be Friday, October 11th through Sunday, October 13th. We won't be there every day. We'll just be there that Friday, but you need to come see us. In the meantime, check us out at academy.com with free shipping on purchases over 25 smacks. Join us for the fun at the newest Academy Sports and Outdoor store in Birmingham. You're going to love it, and we want to see you next Friday. Make plans to come see Jimmy and me. One thing I think Bama's going to do for this game against Vanderbilt, and I say this like I have any input, but this is my trying to manifest this. I still want to throw to Ryan Williams every chance we get, obviously. I mean, because that's if you just want awesomeness, that's what you do. But I think this is a great opportunity to work on the running game. I think there's a great opportunity to say, and without Milroe necessarily, I think there's a great opportunity to give Jam and Justice and whoever else. I don't know if Richard Young will be available. I don't know about, Daniel Hill getting to play some, whatever. But give these guys an opportunity to get their hands on the ball a little bit more, try and establish that run. It feels like we hadn't had a great running game since the first game. I know Jam had a nice big long run against he actually had a nice long run against South Florida. He had a nice run against Wisconsin too. But outside of Milroe's few runs, we didn't have any big long runs against Georgia unless I'm forgetting them.
The biggest, longest run from scrimmage was Milroe. It was definitely Milroe. Jam and Justice never really got free.
Yeah,
Justice had a 20.
The first carry. His
Justice
first carry.
He did have a good. And this is the number one thing to work on for me this week against Vanderbilt and South Carolina is you got to get Jam and Justice more involved in the game. And I don't think Alabama has disinvolved them or we don't trust those guys. Let's not play them. I just think they call a lot of RPOs. And for whatever reason, Milroe's kept it on most of those RPOs, which could have been carries for Justice or Jam. They've been Milroe carries. I would go into Vanderbilt and South Carolina with the idea, I'm going to do more straight runs. No RPOs, just straight up runs like you see in the NFL on Sunday. Just Justice and Jam between the tackles, off tackles, sweeps, powers, traps, inside zone, power, the power zone. I would do all that stuff. Draws, running back draw, just a running back draw play. Hardly ever see those anymore. Let's do that. Let's feed Justice and Jam the ball, not because I'm trying to keep them happy and out of the portal. That's silly. Those guys aren't going anywhere. I'm saying do it because it forces teams that we're playing in the future to worry about it and defend it. Is like, well, we better not spend all our energy on stopping Milroe because the back could kill us.
Well, Vandy averages giving up 122 yards a game rushing. The irony there is Alabama averages giving up about 120 yards a game rushing. Now, our numbers may be skewed a hair because of South Florida. They sort of ran through us the tin horn style. But I feel like we can certainly make up some of the gap here by with this game against Vanderbilt. And so I do want to see the two running backs. But again, I'm not trying to say you don't treat this game like a day of spring practice. Like today, guys, we're working on run offense. But I feel like if it benefits you to get the running backs and make sure they stay involved. I mean, obviously, Jam Miller feels very involved in this offense. I do get the worry, and maybe this is just me judging from afar, that I wonder about Justice's feeling of lack of involvement in the offense from time to time. I can't help but wonder if we had thrown that little flare pass to Justice Haynes late in the game where he didn't get the first down. I can't help but wonder if we had gotten that to Jam, would he have gotten the first? What do you think?
Jam has been a little more dependable in terms of the physicality. Like if I had to, now I'm not saying Justice is not physical. I'm not saying.
Agreed.
I'm just saying if I had to compare the two, who's being the more physical back, and that play took some physicality. If you're going to make the first there, you're probably going to have to run through a tackle. That says Jam to me. I prefer Justice in terms of some more shake and bake. I think Justice a little more shake and bake, big play. Jam a little more physicality. Maybe that was a Jam play, but I think both of them had some disappointing moments in that game, but all the more reason to use them more these next 2 weeks. Let's just get them on track. I don't think
that's what I mean.
I don't think they're getting enough reps to be on track. And that's what I want to see.
And look, we're not complaining because obviously the results are there. And obviously we've got a quarterback that now Kirby Smart called the best running back in the country who happens to throw the ball. And I think a few years ago, that'd be an insult. I don't think it's an insult now because I think he means he throws the ball well. And then we had a wide receiver that has quickly become the most dynamic player in college football, not named Travis Hunter. So I think, it's hard to complain about anything. But what I mean is that, I think if Justice had, you go back to like Wisconsin where you only got a couple of carries or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And you're like, if he had been more involved all this time, would he have more confidence to make the move that would have gotten him that first down? I think there is something to be said for just getting out there and getting game experience with your hands on the ball in any kind of capacity to learn how to do this. Now, some people are just naturals. I mean, Ryan Williams, you put him in any scenario, he is going to be good at what he does because he's a magical, he's a leprechaun that's normal size. I don't know how he does it. You know what he is? I figured it out. For those who like the X-Men comic books, he's Nightcrawler from X-Men. He just teleports somewhere. You're like, oh, I'm going to throw it over here. And they had in Nightcrawler in the comics, every time he teleported, the writer would write out this word BAMF. It'd BAMF. And he'd go, and then he'd be somewhere else. And that's what Ryan Williams.
That's a good trait. You can have different traits as a football player: speed, physicality, quickness.
Teleportation's a good one.
That's a nice trait. That trait's going to land you in the first round, to be completely honest.
That'd be so good. Like, what are we going to do here? We got 1 second left. We're on our 1 yard line and we need a touchdown.
Bamf.
Bamf. We're going to Bamf it right down there.
Let's go with the Bamf play here, which is what I would say 74 times a game if I was calling plays.
Blue 42, Bamf. All right. I don't know. That's not even funny, and I'm
Yeah,
laughing.
that's pretty funny. I'm laughing.
That's stupid for me to laugh at that. I'm sorry, y'all. All right, I'm going to tell you about FanDuel because FanDuel is the best too. I mean, we got the best sponsors. I mean, we do. We're so lucky. And y'all are lucky to get to hear this from us. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game and it's not gas, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and do so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's only at FanDuel.com. And as I've told you many, many times, FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Personal note, I have never in my life had the gout. I'm not sure I have it now, but I have led a life of eating very rich, acidic foods because that's what I like. I've had the worst pain in my foot over the last 2 days, and I finally had to make it a doctor's appointment this morning because it has been awful, and I've been trying to research it, and everybody's told me that's what I got. And I used to make fun of all the people with gout because I'd be like, oh, he's got the gout. Nah, no, it's painful, and it hurts, and it's god-awful. And
apparently you've wished it on people. I'm guessing you've wished it on like a lot of SEC officials. Like,
there's no question.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell one other quick story because then we're going to talk about Alabama and the Heisman race and the playoff race. And I know some people don't like the stories, but it's a good one. It's like, so when this pain first came in my foot, I was like, oh no, I've broken like one of those little tiny foot bones, that you can't really do much about. And it reminded me, and now that I think I have the gout, it reminded me of like my own misdiagnosis. At times I walked into this office years ago, and my dad and I usually are the first two in here. And I look, and my dad's like in his office doing this, like rubbing his chest. And, that's my dad. I'm 50, so he's 70 something. And I'm like, oh my God, then my dad's having a heart attack. I sort of run back there and said, Dad, what's wrong? He said, And I was like, oh God, what? He said, I got stung. I was like, you got stung? What are you talking about? He said, yeah, I got stung by a hornet. I was like looking around, like when he goes, and he stung me right on the nipple. And I was like, what? He said, yeah, last night I was laying in bed and I rolled over and I landed on a hornet and he stung me right on the nipple. And I was like, all of a sudden my concern went right out the window. Now I'm rolling because all I could do was imagine this hornet like just laying there asleep with my parents. And like, then my dad starts rolling over and the hornet's like, no. and Dad just happened to roll over right where his nipple made contact with the hornet stinger. That's the only way this works. And
this is incredible. This is incredible.
It is incredible. And I was like, you look like half a Dolly Parton right now. I mean, everything's all swollen up. Sorry, I know some people.
Why is there a hornet in their bed? I can't. I mean, I don't know that I'll ever get to sleep again. I didn't know that could happen.
I didn't either. And it's not like we live in some hornet-filled area of the South. There are hornets, but I rarely see them. I see wasps and yellow jackets and bumblebees and everything else. I don't see a lot of hornets necessarily. But this hornet, I mean, I was just thinking like, because my parents, for whatever reason, until he just recently died, my parents always had a Great Dane. And they've always had one they've had like 7 of them, but this last one just died like last week. And he always slept in the bed with them. They have a king size bed, but my parents aren't like dwarves. I mean, they're regular sized people. And I was like, how do y'all sleep in there with a Great Dane? And then finally the dog's not sleeping in there. And this hornet's like, hey, I got me a little place to curl up. And then my dad rolls over on him, nippled a stinger immediately. That is crazy to me. What are the odds?
Myriad of wildlife in your parents' room.
And I've told you my raccoon story, and I ain't doing that right now, but I'll tell you later.
Well, in the off season, let's do like a whole episode of the raccoon story again, because I don't care how many times I hear it. I'll look forward. It would be my favorite episode of the whole off season if we do it again, but we'll probably better wait till the games are over.
All right, so playoffs for Alabama.
Oh, those things.
Yeah, we're locked on Bama, not locked on nipple stings. So anyway, a lot of people I've seen some playoff predictions, a bunch of them. Obviously, they come out every, Monday now. And some people still have Alabama like in the 5 spot. Like they don't trust us to win the conference. I kind of get it because, I mean, I guess they're saying is Texas is going to win it. And what this makes me think about, I can't help but already fast forward. Like, what if Alabama and Texas meet again in Atlanta? And
It's what we predicted, both of us.
Both of us did predict
Both of us
that.
got Alabama, Texas in the SEC championship game.
We both predicted it. I kind of assumed it wouldn't happen because we both predicted it.
That's an excellent point.
Okay. But last year, before Alabama played Michigan, I got to meet Jalen, Milroe, and Terry and Arnold at that Christmas party I told you about. I talked to them for a long time. They were the best dudes you ever met. And I remember telling Jalen, I was like, Jalen, what are the odds that you get to possibly rematch Texas in Houston, basically your home city, your home state, for a rematch for the game that led to your benching you? And Jalen, he said, hey, I was actually born in Los Angeles too. So the semifinal game is kind of homecoming for me as well. I was like, oh my God, this is bananas. Like, this is what's going to happen. So of course, what happened was Washington played Michigan. But this could be the rematch that should have been. And now that rematch that should have been will not only feature Milroe playing the team that sort of led to his demise, but also led to his Phoenix-like ascension. It also be Isaiah Bond against Bama. And I mean, I guess if you want to say Amari Black, but he's only played 5 seconds there since he's been there. So, I mean, this is two storybook to happen. So, you know, what's going to happen is going to be Ole Miss and Tennessee.
Well, I wrote a column this morning. It'll be out by the time this podcast is out. And, you know, it addresses this a little bit. I want people to think about, you know, getting to Atlanta gets you in the championship. I firmly believe that. If you're in Atlanta, you're in the playoff. I don't think the only possibility of that not happening is if you make it to Atlanta and you have a second loss, and then you get to Atlanta and Atlanta's your third loss. Is that going to knock you out? In my opinion, no team that gets to the championship game is ever going to get knocked out. I don't think the committee is going to hold it against you to get to your conference championship game and lose. But let's say, Luke, this is the weird part because this is crazy. What if I told you that, let's say we're right and it's Alabama and Texas, for instance, and Alabama gets to Atlanta and loses? Well, now you have the national championship playoff, which I consider more important than the SEC, although I consider the SEC trophy hugely important. But I admit the national championship is a little better than the SEC championship. I think so. I bet most of y'all do. So here's the deal. What if I told you that getting to Atlanta and losing might be better than winning? Because you're going to go, no way, idiot. You don't understand the format. The format is if you win in Atlanta, you get a first-round bye. Well, let me ask you this. If you lose in Atlanta and you end up the 5th seed, who is in better shape? Texas, who would have a bye in the first round. They don't have to play in the first round, but in the second round, they play the number 8 seed, which is the 4th best wild card, who could be someone like, I'm just throwing out a name, Tennessee. So Texas versus Tennessee in round 2. Meanwhile, Alabama lost the SEC championship game. They're the number 5 seed. They do have to play a first-round game, but it's a home game, probably against someone like Boise. You're going to be a 15, 18-point favorite in that game. Not to say it's easy, not to say it's a slam dunk, not to say that getting beat up in the game is a good thing. It's not. It's a bad thing. I agree. But if you beat Boise, which you're favored to do by 15 or 18 points, your second-round game is against the 4 seed, but the 4 seed is the worst group, the worst Power 4 champion.
Probably BYU.
It could be BYU or Iowa State based on what's going on right now. So would you rather have Texas, who has a bye, but then plays Tennessee, or would you rather be Alabama, home game against Boise, neutral site game against Iowa State? I'm telling you the 5th seed in that scenario is probably the place to be if you're interested in getting to the semifinal. I know it's 2 games, but it's easier than that 1 seed, very possible. So it's just something to think about because we're so many weeks away. I don't know that we're thinking in those terms, but Alabama beating Georgia means, hey, it's time for us to start thinking about these terms because most of these games down the stretch, Alabama's going to be a big favorite. A few games are tough, but I like Alabama's pole position as of right now.
Yeah, and that's why automatic qualifiers. I think you can have automatic qualifiers for championships in the conference. It's stupid to make them automatically be in the top 4. But that being said, really quickly, Heisman race. Jalen Milroe's vaulted to the top of the list, and I saw where at least one service has Ryan Williams at like number 6. Now, that's not happening. We all know that. Well, but what if it did?
If the next 8 games are as productive as his first 4, if he continues this level of production, he's in the mix.
And don't forget, people, he's the only player in Alabama football history to win Mr. Football in high school as a sophomore. And then he did it twice. I don't remember if he's the only.
He won Mr. Football as a 15-year-old and as a 16-year-old.
And he would have clearly won it this year.
Yeah.
And so he would be the only 3-time champion. I'm not or 3-time winner. I don't know how many people have done it twice. I think somebody else has done it twice.
No, he's actually the first. He was the first 2-time guy to do it. Never even played his senior year.
He is.
So it's crazy to me that we're talking about with a straight face. Is he the best receiver in the SEC? I'm not saying he is for sure. I mean, there's Scott Missouri. Scott Missouri is pretty good.
I'll tell you what. You put Luther Burden on Bama and you put Ron Williams on Missouri, and Luther Burden's looked good because he's got a great quarterback. But I bet you the kid, what's his name? What's the kid's name at Missouri?
Luther Burden.
No, the quarterback.
Oh, Brady Cook.
Cook, yeah, Cook. I bet you he's his number 1 target, and I bet you he's kicking chicken.
Oh, I'm sure he would be, and I'm not saying that down the road. I mean, when it comes to NFL draft time, I think Ryan Williams will be drafted higher than Luther Burden will be. I'm just saying Ryan Williams as a 17-year-old freshman versus Luther Burden as a 21-year-old junior that's about to turn pro. Hey, just the fact that it's a discussion is just freaking incredible.
Yep. And Jimmy, just one more thing. Yesterday we talked about what was the viewership. We said it had to be astronomical. It was the most viewed college football game in the regular season since 2017. So just like we thought. And ABC is like, yeah, we did the right thing by getting this SEC stuff. So
if that had never happened, imagine that Alabama-Georgia game would have been played at 2:30.
Oh, I don't know. CBS would have.
CBS probably would have selected that as another. That's a good point. The CBS would have selected it as their one time a year primetime game. But point being, I'm enjoying the best SEC game always being at night. I'm enjoying it.
And it's good to hear somebody not talk about the officials every other play. So
they can tune into us for that.
All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with more. Until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll Tide.